A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Our much respected President, brothers and sisters, friends watching online, Assalamu alaikum. And a slightly belated but heartfelt Ramadan Mubarak. We're fortunate enough every Ramadan to hear a short talk once a week, and as a result, we've come to learn a lot about this holy month and how best to utilize it. So my talk today is also related to Ramadan, but from a slightly different perspective. So I'm going to jump right in and read to you from the Holy Quran. Verse 168 of chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah reads, O men, eat the lawful and good things from what is in the earth, and follow not the footsteps of the devil. Surely he is an open enemy to you. Further on in the chapter, verse 172 reads, O you who believe, eat of the good things that we have provided you with, and give thanks to God if he it is whom you serve. Now, before I discuss these verses in detail, let's take a look at food and health in general for a moment. Never is it more obvious what a massive role food plays in our lives than in the month of Ramadan. There are times during your fast that you feel low on energy, you feel a bit moody, easily irritated, you stumble on your words like I just did. So if abstaining from food can have such an effect on your personality, then to me it makes sense that the opposite is also true. And eating has an effect on your personality as well, or rather what you eat. And actually a lot of nutritionists have been looking into this, and there are new reports every day on how specific foods affect our emotions, our concentration, energy, and if you want to get technical about it, then how they influence our metabolism, hormones, neurotransmitters, which are mood chemicals produced in the brain. So there's simply no denying that what we consume has a huge impact on our emotional and physical health and well-being. And this is something that's becoming increasingly important nowadays, especially the physical health part. The NHS in Leeds has produced a white paper on Islam and health, in which it says that 40% of South Asian men smoke cigarettes, compared to 24% of men in general. People from the Pakistani and Bangladeshi communities are up to 6 times more likely to have diabetes than the general population. 1 in 4 adults is now classified as obese in the UK. In an article by Dr. Muhammad Jafar that I found in a 1928 issue of the Islamic Review, happy to provide the link to that to anybody who's interested in reading it, he talks about the way that people justify their unhealthy lifestyles and eating habits by saying, well, our forefathers have been taking the same diet and they lived perfectly healthily. So how can that be if present scientific denunciations of this diet are true? In other words, that's similar to us saying, well, everyone else is eating burgers and chips every day and they seem fine, so why should I be concerned? But, he says, if for a moment you apply the same argument to preventative measures against diseases, you'd realize the fallacy of this line of argument. You wouldn't, for example, be in extreme pain and say that painkillers didn't exist at the time of my ancestors, so I'm not going to take any. But people are always reluctant to make changes. It's just the way that human beings are, the way human nature is. We get comfortable and we feel wary about making changes in our lives, even when there's evidence in front of us to show that the change would actually be better for us. It can be hard to change even when you want to. But as I was preparing this speech, and as I read through the verses that I opened with, what struck me was that we think that we have a choice as to whether or not we should choose a healthy lifestyle. But from what I've understood, no, we don't. We are being commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do so. I'll reread those verses to you. O men, eat the lawful and good things from what is in the earth, and follow not the footsteps of the devil. Surely he is an open enemy to you. And, O you who believe, eat of the good things that we have provided you with, and give thanks to God if he it is whom you serve. So we have two commandments to obey here. One is to eat what is lawful, that is halal. And the second is to eat good things, what is tayyib. And in fact, in most instances in the Quran, when we are told to eat halal food, we are simultaneously told to eat what is tayyib, what is pure, what is good. But very often we focus on the part that says to eat halal food, that is, food slaughtered in accordance with the prescribed rules laid out in the Quran, and food that is not forbidden. Seldom do we hear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to eat tayyib food, even though in the Quran the two are always mentioned together. We hear that XYZ nutritionist suggests that we eat healthy this and organic that. We accept the science behind eating good food, but let me ask you this. How often do we think to ourselves, I have to eat better because God has commanded me to? As a Muslim, as a believer, it is an obligation upon me to nourish myself with good food. How many of us think of eating well in that way? And if you delve a little deeper, you see what is being said here is that there is a relationship between the physical and spiritual conditions of human beings. The essence of the Quran is to provide guidance to us, almost like a syllabus for life. And every guidance offered has some logic behind it. So think about it. Why does God want you to eat good things? It's because what you eat has an effect on not only your physical well-being, but your spiritual well-being too. I would love to have researched into how food shapes your character, perhaps next year. But one very basic and obvious point is that if you don't eat properly, you simply won't have the energy to fulfill any of the other requirements of your Lord, such as to pray, to fast. And in a way, food is used to test us as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid down what is specifically prohibited for us to eat. And this kind of dietary practice is really a way for us to demonstrate our obedience to His word. Yes, today we also have science telling us that, for example, if you eat a lot of pork, it increases the chances of your arteries getting clogged up and therefore putting you at greater risk of heart disease, diabetes, etc. But for Muslims, this science just provides more incentive not to eat forbidden foods, not reason. God has commanded us not to, and that is enough. We obey His commands out of love for Him and with faith that He has prescribed the best way of life for us. And this is why Ramadan becomes a fantastic opportunity for us to rethink the role that food plays in our individual lives. During this month, we control one of our most basic instincts, hunger. And it's not always easy, especially during summer months like at the moment. It can be very challenging. But we persevere and we learn how to manage such a fundamental physical need. Why? Ask anybody here why we do this. What will they say? Because of the health benefits? Because research now shows that fasting promotes better brain health? No. We acknowledge these benefits, of course, but we fast simply because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to. So where you can observe this commandment of His with such enthusiasm and passion, why not extend that to your everyday diet, recognizing that doing that is also fulfilling a command from your Lord? Let's talk about the foods that are mentioned in the Quran. I find it fascinating that in many descriptions of paradise, foods are used. For example, Surah Muhammad, verse 115 reads, "A parable of the garden which the dutiful are promised. Therein are rivers of water, not altering for the worse, and rivers of milk, whereof the taste changes not, and rivers of wine, delicious to the drinkers, and rivers of honey, clarified." Now, as it says at the start of this verse, the foods mentioned are parables or metaphors, perhaps not to be taken literally, as the Quran also states that the blessings of paradise are like none that we can imagine or that we've seen before. But what's interesting is the choice of language. It's food that is used to evoke in our minds a sense of what paradise will be like, to make us think of something wonderful. And at the same time, food is used to describe to us what hell would be like too. In chapter 10, Surah Yunus, part of verse 4 reads, "For those who disbelieve, for them is a drink of hot water and a painful chastisement because they disbelieve. Again, perhaps this is not to be taken literally, but to evoke an image of something burning and painful, it's a drink that is used. And we find this curious use of food to describe things in the English language as well. For example, we talk about being hungry and thirsty for knowledge. And we all know this one: when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Elsewhere we have mention of good food. In Surah Al-Nahl, verse 11, He causes to grow for you thereby herbage, and the olives, and the date palms, and the grapes, and all the fruits. Surely there is a sign in this for a people who reflect. Let's look at the diet of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as is described in the book of Imam Tirmidhi. It is said that he used to eat barley, which now we know is an amazing source of goodness, considered the best of grains, helping with things like lowering cholesterol, lowering the risk of type 2 diabetes, and so much more. He used to eat dates, again, another food extremely rich in nutrients. He drank goat, sheep, and camel's milk rather than cow's milk, which I found very interesting. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or it was an availability issue, maybe somebody else would know. But nowadays, there's a lot of research, including a very recent Harvard University study that suggests the hormones present in cow's milk may not be good for humans. He liked pumpkin, cucumber, grapes, and melons. Another interesting thing to note is that meat was not often consumed in the time of the Prophet. You had to personally sacrifice an animal before you had meat to eat, so meat was a sort of luxury food. Not to say that the Prophet and his companions were vegetarians, certainly not, but it was not eaten as often as we do today. And this links us to chapter 7, Surah Al-Araf of the Quran, verse 31 of which reads, Eat and drink and be not prodigal. Prodigal being to do something recklessly or wastefully. And so some translators read this verse as eat and drink, but waste not by excess. I wonder if the amount that we consume would be considered excess. I don't know. My personal view, and I don't think it's a unique one, I think most of you will agree with me, is that the subject of health is extremely important, perhaps the most important, and something that we need to talk about in our communities, in our mosque. Because unhealthy diets are like an epidemic at the moment. Some of it's our own fault, some of it is about ease and availability. I have a friend who went on a diet recently, and she was told she could eat anything, as long as it wasn't factory processed in any way. And I remember thinking, well, what will she eat? Because everything is factory processed, from bread to milk to frozen foods to microwave meals. So it is a challenge in this day and age to actually be healthy and to raise children that will eat healthily. But my point to you today is this: Muslims should be leading the way with this. Our holy book tells us that God himself commands you to eat well, making it an integral part of your faith. And when it comes to food, we fast for almost 18 hours a day in the summer. That's a real challenge. So if we can do that purely out of love for Allah, purely out of obedience for Allah, then why is it so difficult for us to take better care of ourselves at all other times? Surely that's much less of a challenge than fasting. I'd like to leave you with a hadith from the book of Tirmidhi. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "Our bodies are a trust from God, and we are accountable for how we look after our health." May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the wisdom to eat better and with the good health and energy to help others around us do so as well. Ameen.